Welcome to this Chanel, where every night a new horror story drags you deeper than the last. Before anything else, hit subscribe right now. If you miss even one night, you'll miss the piece that connects all these stories into something far darker. Comment below where you're watching from and what time it is. I want to know exactly who's awake inside the dark with us. And listen carefully, this story has something hidden. A moment so disturbing, so unexpected that most people don't recognize it until the very end. If you leave early, you'll never know what really happened. So stay with me, all the way to the final second. Story first, the midnight refuel. I've been hauling freight across the Midwest for 17 years, and I thought I'd seen every kind of truck stop this country had to offer. Nothing prepared me for what happened on Interstate 70 through Kansas last October. It was 2:47 a.m. when my fuel gauge dropped into the red zone. I'd miscalculated my mileage, a rookie mistake I hadn't made in over a decade. The highway stretched empty in both directions, just endless darkness punctuated by my headlights. Then I saw it, a truck stop that definitely wasn't on my GPS. The sign read "Last Chance Fuel" in flickering neon that cast everything in sickly blue light. The lot was packed with big rigs, maybe 30 of them, all lined up in perfect rows. Strange, considering I hadn't passed another truck in over an hour. I pulled up to a pump, noting the ancient design, the kind with mechanical numbers that flipped over. The price display showed 87 cents per gallon. I tried my credit card. The machine spat it out. I tried again. Same result. The convenience store windows glowed with warm light, so I headed inside, my boots crunching on gravel that seemed too loud in the still night air. The attendant behind the counter looked up from a newspaper. An actual newspaper, yellowed and brittle. He was maybe 60. With oil-stained coveralls and eyes that didn't quite focus on me. "Cash only," he said before I could speak. His voice had a strange echo, like he was talking from the bottom of a well. I pulled out 220s. He took them slowly, his fingers cold when they brushed mine. "Pump 3, he said, though I hadn't told him which pump I'd chosen. As he made change, I glanced at his newspaper. The date read August 15th, 1987. "That's an old paper," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked down at it, then back at me, his expression never changing. "Is it?" I took my change and walked back outside. The other truck still sat silent, no drivers visible, no movement at all. I started pumping fuel, watching the mechanical numbers flip with each gallon. The smell was wrong, too sweet, almost like burning sugar mixed with gasoline. That's when I noticed the trucks around me weren't just old models, they were ancient. Kenworth W900s from the 70s, Peterbilts with configurations that hadn't been street legal in decades, and they were pristine like they'd just rolled off assembly lines that had shut down before I was born. The pump clicked off at exactly 40 gallons. I screwed the cap back on and turned to leave, but my truck was different now. The paint looked faded, the chrome dulled by years that hadn't passed when I'd parked 5 minutes ago. I ran my hand along the hood. It felt cold, colder than the October night air warranted, and rough with rust that hadn't been there. I climbed into the cab. The interior smelled musty, and my phone was dead despite showing 87% battery when I'd parked. The radio wouldn't turn on, but the engine started, thank God, with a rough cough that sent shudders through the frame. I drove back toward the highway, glancing in my mirror at the truck stop. The other rigs were pulling out too, one by one, following me in a silent convoy. Their headlights reflected wrong, the beams too yellow, too dim. When I reached the on-ramp, I punched the accelerator. My truck responded sluggishly. The engine, whining with effort it shouldn't need. The speedometer climbed to 60, then 70, but looking at the mile markers, I wasn't moving that fast. Everything felt stretched, like driving through invisible molasses. The convoy followed for 11 miles. I counted every marker, every tenth of a mile, my hands locked on the wheel with white-knuckle intensity. Then, at mile marker 89, they vanished, just gone, as if they'd never been there. My truck suddenly surged forward with proper power, the engine note returning to normal. I pulled over at the next real truck stop, one I recognized, one with other drivers walking around and modern pumps and coffee that smelled right. My hands shook so badly, I could barely hold the cup. In the restroom mirror, I looked the same, but I felt different, like I'd left something behind at that impossible place. When I checked my fuel gauge, it showed 3/4 full, exactly what it had shown before I'd stopped. The receipt in my pocket had turned to dust, leaving only a faint outline of blue ink that spelled out one word: return. I called my dispatcher to report the time discrepancy. According to him, I'd been on schedule all night, never stopped, never lost contact. The drive time logs in my truck showed the same thing: continuous movement, no stops, no gap in time. But my tires were balder than they'd been, worn down by miles I never drove. And sometimes, late at night when I'm running low on fuel, I see that truck stop in the distance. The sign flickers, the lot is full, and I drive past, even if it means running on fumes, even if it means walking 5 miles for a gas can, because I saw what was written on those other trucks as they followed me. Registration stickers from 1987, 1989, 1991. Dates when drivers went missing, when trucks were never found, when families stopped waiting for someone to come home. I'm still driving, still hauling freight, but I plan my fuel stops carefully now, and I never stop at a place that isn't on my GPS. Some points of no return give you a choice. That one doesn't let you leave at all. Story second, the passenger. 23 years behind the wheel taught me to trust my instincts. That's why I should have known better when I picked up the hitchhiker on Highway 15 through Montana during a February blizzard. The visibility was near zero. Snow coming down so thick my wipers couldn't keep up. I was crawling along at maybe 20 miles per hour when my headlights caught him, a figure standing on the shoulder with his thumb out, wearing nothing but jeans and a thin jacket. No hat, no gloves, no scarf. In temperatures that had to be 10 below zero. I should have kept driving. Every safety protocol, every warning from other truckers, every horror story told at rest stops said never pick up hitchhikers. But the man looked like he was dying out there, and I couldn't live with leaving someone to freeze. I pulled over. He climbed in without a word, bringing a blast of cold air that seemed to settle into the cab like something alive. Up close, he looked normal enough, maybe 30, dark hair plastered to his head with snow, pale skin from the cold. But his eyes were wrong, too steady, too focused, like he was looking at something just behind me. "Thanks," he said. His voice sounded normal, maybe a little rough. Didn't think anyone would stop. "Where you headed?" I asked, pulling back onto the highway. "Same direction as you." The heater was blasting, but the cab wouldn't warm up. My breath misted in the air, and I could see his too, or thought I could. It was hard to tell in the darkness. I tried to make conversation, asking where he was from, what he was doing out in a blizzard. He answered, but every response was vague, information that told me nothing. After 15 minutes, I glanced over at him. His jacket wasn't wet. The snow should have melted in the warmth of the cab, should have left damp patches on the seat and floor. But everything was dry, more than that. There were no drops of water anywhere, no puddles, no moisture at all. "You okay?" he asked, noticing me staring. "Yeah. Just, you warming up all right? I'm fine." He smiled, and that's when I saw his teeth were wrong. Not broken or rotten, just wrong. Too many of them, or arranged in a way that didn't look quite human when he spread his lips wide. I focused on the road, my heart starting to pound. The CB radio crackled with static. though no one was transmitting. The sound formed patterns, almost like words, almost like warnings. My passenger leaned forward, listening to it intently. "Busy night," he said. "Not much traffic in this weather." I didn't mean traffic. We drove in silence after that. The storm seemed to worsen, the snow turning into a white wall that my headlights couldn't penetrate. I checked my GPS. It showed us still on Highway 15, but the map looked wrong. Roads appeared that shouldn't exist, towns with names I didn't recognize, a landscape that didn't match anything I'd driven through before. "I think we're lost," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "No," my passenger replied. "We're exactly where we need to be." I looked at him again. His appearance had changed. Not drastically, not in a way I could point to and say that's different, but something was off. His features seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at them, rearranging themselves into configurations that hurt to think about. The mile markers had stopped. We'd been driving for over an hour, should have covered 60 or 70 miles despite the slow speed. But we were passing the same marker again and again. Mile 247. Over and over, every 2 minutes. Mile 247. "I need to pull over," I said. "No, you don't." "Yes, I do. I need to check my load, make sure the chains are holding." His hand shot out and gripped my wrist. His fingers were ice cold, cold enough to burn, and stronger than any human hand should be. "Keep driving," he said. His voice had changed too, deeper now, resonating with harmonics that human vocal cords couldn't produce. I yanked my hand away, feeling the skin blister where he'd touched me. The pain was sharp and immediate. "Get out," I said. "Get out of my truck right now." He laughed. The sound filled the cab like water filling a drowning man's lungs. "We can't stop now. Not until we reach it." "Reach what?" "The place where the road ends." The dashboard lights began to flicker. My speedometer needle spun wildly, showing speeds from 0 to 120, though the truck's movement felt constant. Outside, the snow had taken on a reddish tint, like we were driving through a storm of blood. I did the only thing I could think of. I yanked the wheel hard to the right, deliberately sending the truck into a skid. We slid sideways, the trailer jackknifing, the whole rig tilting at an angle that should have sent us rolling. My passenger shrieked, not in fear but in rage, and the sound shattered the windshield into a spiderweb of cracks. The truck stopped moving, complete silence. No engine noise, no wind, no sound at all. I was alone in the cab. The passenger was gone, no sign he'd ever been there except for the blistered skin on my wrist and the cold that wouldn't leave. Outside, the storm had vanished. I was parked on the shoulder of Highway 15, exactly where I'd picked up the hitchhiker. My CB radio squawked with normal traffic. My GPS showed the correct route. The dashboard clock indicated only 5 minutes had passed since I'd stopped, but my fuel tank was nearly empty, burned through as if I'd driven hundreds of miles. And on the passenger seat was a single item, an old road map, the kind they stopped printing decades ago. It was open to Montana, with a route marked in red ink. The line went off the printed map, into the white margins, into spaces that couldn't exist. I reported seeing a hitchhiker to Highway Patrol. They found nothing, no footprints, no trace of anyone. The blizzard I'd driven through never happened according to weather reports. That stretch of highway was clear all night. I still have the map. I've tried to throw it away, burn it, destroy it, but it always comes back, appearing in my cab, on my seat, tucked into my logbook. The red line grows longer each time, extending further into that white space, getting closer to something marked at the end. Just 3 words, written in handwriting that looks like mine but isn't. "You're driving here." Story 3rd, the way station. I was hauling a load of electronics from Seattle to Chicago when I hit the way station on Interstate 90, just past the Idaho border. It was mandatory, the signs made that clear, and I was legal on weight and hours, so I pulled in without concern. The facility looked standard. Concrete buildings, scales embedded in the road, a few inspectors in high-visibility vests. But something felt wrong immediately. The other trucks ahead of me were moving through too slowly, each one stopping for much longer than a normal weight check required. When my turn came, I rolled onto the scales and waited. The inspector approached my window, clipboard in hand. He was a big man, maybe 50, with a face that seemed too expressionless, too still. "License and manifest," he said. I handed them over. He examined my license with unusual intensity, holding it up to the light, running his finger over the surface. "Says here you're Derek Holloway." "That's right, but are you really Derek Holloway?" The question caught me off guard. What kind of question is that? The kind that needs answering. He made a notation on his clipboard. "Pull forward to Bay 3 for inspection." "But my weight is legal, I can see the readout." "Bay 3 now." I pulled forward, unease growing in my gut. Bay 3 was a garage-style building with the door open. Inside, I could see another truck being inspected, but the process looked wrong. The inspectors were removing panels from the trailer, not searching for contraband, but examining the structure itself, as if looking for something hidden in the metal. An inspector waved me in. I parked and climbed down. There were 5 of them now, all with the same expressionless faces, all moving with synchronized precision that looked rehearsed. They surrounded my trailer without speaking. "What's this about?" I asked. The lead inspector, I assumed he was the lead because he had more patches on his vest, consulted a handheld device that looked nothing like standard inspection equipment. It had a screen showing strange symbols, constantly shifting patterns that hurt to look at directly. "We're checking for contamination," he said. "Contamination? It's factory-sealed electronics, all manifested, not that kind of contamination." They opened my trailer doors. The electronics were there, pallets of boxed computer equipment, exactly as loaded. But the inspectors weren't looking at the cargo. They were scanning the interior surfaces with their devices, paying particular attention to the corners, the ceiling, the floor. One of them spoke, his voice flat. "Found one. Northwest corner." They all converged on that spot. I watched as they produced tools from their belts. Not normal tools, but instruments with too many moving parts with surfaces that reflected light in ways that made my eyes water. They began cutting into the trailer wall. "Hey, you can't do that. You're damaging my trailer." "Your trailer," the lead inspector repeated. "Are you certain it's yours?" "I'm hauling it, aren't I?" "That doesn't answer the question." They pulled away a section of the wall. Behind it should have been insulation and another metal layer. Instead, there was a space, a gap that couldn't physically exist given the trailer's dimensions. And in that space, something moved. I stepped back, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. The thing was organic, pulsing with rhythmic contractions like a heartbeat. It was attached to the metal with tendrils that had grown into the structure, fusing flesh with steel in ways that violated every law of nature I understood. "What the hell is that?" "Contamination," the inspector said calmly. "You've been carrying it for approximately 600 miles. It's nearly mature." They extracted the thing with their tools, working with practiced efficiency. It fought back, the tendrils lashing out, leaving scorch marks on the concrete where they struck. The inspector seemed unbothered, containing it in a metal case that sealed with a hiss of equalizing pressure. "Check the cab," the lead inspector ordered. They surrounded my truck before I could protest. I watched them scan it with their devices, saw the screens light up with more of those impossible symbols. One inspector opened my sleeper berth and pointed at the mattress. Another one, early stage. I felt sick. The mattress where I'd been sleeping, where I spent a third of my life on long hauls, had something growing in it. They cut it open, revealing another pulsing mass, smaller than the first, but unmistakably alive, unmistakably wrong. What is it?" My voice came out as a whisper. Doesn't have a name you could pronounce, the lead inspector said. They attach to vehicles that travel the long routes, the empty highways, the stretches where reality gets thin. Most drivers never notice. They grow slowly, feeding on motion, on the displacement of space. Eventually they mature. And then the vehicle doesn't arrive at its destination. It just continues, driving nowhere, everywhere, never stopping. We find them sometimes decades later still moving, the drivers long since integrated into the contamination. They finished their extraction, sealing both masses in containment units. The inspectors sprayed something into the cavities they'd created, and I watched as the metal knitted itself back together, healing like living tissue. "You're clear," the lead inspector said, "for now. But you've been on the road a long time, Mr. Holloway. 23 years according to your logs. The contamination is attracted to drivers like you, the ones who spend more time driving than standing still. What am I supposed to do? Be aware. Check your vehicle if you feel it." He paused, searching for words. "If you feel the road pulling at you, if you have the urge to just keep driving, to never stop, to find highways that aren't on maps, resist. Come back here. We'll check you again." They let me go. I drove out of that way station with a trailer that looked untouched and a mattress that showed no signs of being cut open. But I could feel the difference. The truck drove lighter, responded quicker, as if a weight I hadn't noticed had been removed. I finished my run to Chicago without incident, but now, every time I see a way station, I watch for the ones that look too normal, too standard. Because the real ones, the ones checking for contamination, they're scattered along the highways that see the most through traffic, the most long-haul drivers, the most miles where the road stretches so far you forget what it's like to be still. I've been through 3 more since that day. They always find something, small things, early stages, caught before maturity. And each time the inspectors look at me with those expressionless faces and say the same thing: "Keep checking, Mr. Holloway. Eventually you won't want us to find them." That's when you'll know you've reached your point of no return. Story 4th, the parallel route. I picked up the load in Phoenix on a Tuesday. Standard freight, manufactured goods headed to Dallas. The route was simple: Interstate 10 East. A drive I'd made hundreds of times in my 14 years as an owner-operator. Nothing suggested what was about to happen. The first anomaly occurred near Tucson. I passed a rest area I didn't recognize, which was unusual given how well I knew this route. The sign said Desert View Rest Stop, next right, but when I checked my GPS, nothing appeared. I kept driving, dismissing it as a mapping error. 50 miles later, I saw another unfamiliar landmark, a truck stop with a restaurant chain I'd never heard of. The sign read Cactus Junction Travel Plaza, with logos for Fuel Max and Roadrunner Diner. I pulled in, curious. The lot was busy with trucks, all standard makes and models, drivers walking around looking normal. But as I walked toward the building, I noticed small differences. The license plates on vehicles were from states that didn't exist: North Arizona, East New Mexico. The dates on newspapers and the vending machines showed the correct year, but impossible dates: February 32nd, March 14th appearing twice. Inside the diner, I sat at the counter. The menu offered normal food with slightly wrong names. Hamburger was ground beef round, coffee was roasted bean beverage. The waitress seemed normal until she spoke, her words coming out with unusual precision, as if English wasn't her first language despite her perfect American accent. "What'll you have, driver? Just coffee?" "Black." She poured it, and I noticed her name tag, Susan. 47 years of service. She looked maybe 30. I paid with a $20 bill. She examined it closely before making change. "You're not from around here, are you?" she asked. "I'm from Phoenix originally." "No." She leaned closer. "I mean here, this place, this route. Lady, I drive I-10 all the time." "No, you don't. You drive a different I-10. Similar, mostly identical, but not this one. The roads overlapped, and you slipped through without noticing. Happens sometimes, especially on long straight stretches in the desert. I laughed, assuming she was joking, but her expression remained serious. "You need to get back," she continued. "The routes are still close here. Another 100 miles, they diverge completely. After that, you'll be stuck on this side. This is crazy. Check your phone, check your connection." I pulled out my phone. No signal, which wasn't unusual in remote areas. But more than that, the carrier name was wrong. Instead of my actual carrier, it showed Dimension Link Mobile. My apps looked the same but had subtly different icons. "What is this?" I whispered. "A parallel route, same highway, different reality. The roads intersect in places, especially in long, empty stretches where there's not much to anchor either version to a specific reality. Drivers slip between them without noticing because everything looks almost identical. How do I get back?" She pulled out a hand-drawn map from under the counter, like she'd been waiting for someone to ask. "Keep driving east. At mile marker 311, you'll see an exit that doesn't make sense. It'll say business loop, but there's no town nearby. Take it. Follow it exactly 4.5 miles. You'll come back onto the highway, but it'll be your highway, your version of I-10. And if I don't, then you keep driving on this one. You'll make it to Dallas. A Dallas anyway. But it won't be your Dallas. The people there won't know you. Your delivery address won't exist. You'll be a driver from another reality trying to navigate one that's almost, but not quite, like the one you came from." I left without finishing the coffee. Back in my truck, I examined everything carefully. My paperwork looked correct. The cargo was unchanged, but small details were wrong. The air freshener hanging from my mirror was a different color. The radio presets had shifted to stations I'd never programmed. I drove, watching the mile markers count upward. At mile marker 311, I almost missed it. The exit appeared suddenly, the sign exactly as Susan had described, business loop with no town name. The exit ramp looked wrong, angling off at an impossible curve that seemed to fold in on itself. I took it. The road spiraled downward, though the terrain around me stayed level. My sense of direction went haywire. The sun appeared in the wrong position. Shadows fell at angles that didn't match the light source. The distance counter on my odometer spun wildly, showing far more than 4.5 miles, then resetting to 0, then spinning again. When I emerged back onto the highway, everything snapped into focus. The wrongness vanished. My phone showed my actual carrier, full signal, normal apps. The air freshener was the right color again. And most importantly, my GPS showed I-10 East with all the correct landmarks, rest stops, and towns. I made it to Dallas without further incident. The delivery went smoothly. The address existed, and the receiving clerk knew exactly who I was. But I kept Susan's map. It shows routes I never knew existed, exit ramps that appear and disappear, service areas that exist between realities. Sometimes on long, empty highways, I feel the road shift beneath my wheels. The mile markers blur, showing numbers that don't match my GPS. The radio picks up stations that shouldn't exist, playing songs I've never heard by artists I don't recognize. That's when I know the routes are overlapping again, the parallel highways coming close enough to slip between. I stay alert, watching for the signs that I'm drifting from one reality to another, because Susan was right. The roads are mostly identical, and you can drive for hours without noticing you've crossed over, but eventually the differences add up. Eventually you end up somewhere that's almost home, almost right, almost the world you remember, and by then finding the exit that leads back becomes nearly impossible. I've seen other drivers on these parallel routes. We recognize each other somehow, though we never speak about it directly. Just a nod, a moment of eye contact that says I know where we are, and I know you know too. Some of them have been driving these in-between highways for years, hauling loads from one almost reality to another, never quite making it home. They're not lost exactly. The routes are real, the destinations exist, but they're driving through versions of the world that don't quite match the one they started from. I still take loads on I-10, but I'm careful now. I watch for the signs, the wrong rest stops, the impossible dates, the small details that don't match. And I keep that map close, with its hand-drawn exits and warnings written in the margins. Don't drive past sunset. Avoid mile 276 on Thursdays. If you see the blue truck, you've gone too far. Because once you know these parallel routes exist, you can't unknow it. You can't simply drive without wondering which version of the highway you were on, which reality you'll end up in when you reach your destination. Every trip becomes a gamble, every mile marker a question. Am I still on my road, or have I slipped into another? Story 5th, the cargo. The shipping manifest listed it as industrial equipment. Standard machinery parts, nothing unusual, headed from a warehouse in Gary, Indiana, to a facility in Memphis. The weight was legal, the paperwork clean, and the pay was better than usual for such a straightforward haul. I should have questioned that better pay. I picked up the trailer at midnight. The warehouse district was empty, just my truck and a forklift operator who loaded the pallets in silence. He was an older man, maybe 70, and he worked with unusual speed for someone his age. When he finished, he handed me the paperwork without making eye contact. "Don't open the trailer," he said. "I never do unless there's a problem. There won't be a problem if you don't open the trailer. Just drive straight through, no stops except fuel. Deliver it, drop it, leave. What's in there? Equipment, like the manifest says." He walked away before I could ask anything else, disappearing into the warehouse. The first few hours of the drive were normal. I took I-65 south, moving through the dark Indiana countryside. The trailer pulled well, no unusual weight distribution, no strange noises. But around 3 a.m., I started hearing sounds from the cargo area. At first, I dismissed it as normal settling. Loads shift, metal parts move against each other, straps creak. These were different sounds, rhythmic tapping, like something trying to communicate. Tap, 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 pause. Tap, 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 pause. Over and over, a pattern that was too regular to be random. I turned up the radio to drown it out. The tapping got louder, matching the volume, ensuring I could still hear it beneath the music. I turned the radio off. The tapping continued, now accompanied by a low humming sound, a vibration I could feel through the seat. At a fuel stop in Elizabethtown, Kentucky, I circled the trailer. The seals were intact, the doors secure. No visible damage, no explanation for the sounds. But the trailer felt wrong. The metal was warm to the touch despite the cold November night, and when I pressed my ear against it, the humming grew louder, resolving into something that almost sounded like voices. I called the dispatcher. "There's something wrong with this load." "What kind of wrong?" "Noises, movement. It sounds like what?" I couldn't say it. Couldn't voice the thought that something alive was in there. Something that wasn't equipment at all. Just strange sounds. "I think something came loose." "Can you complete the delivery?" "I don't know. The client is paying triple overtime for immediate delivery. If you can't complete it, I'll find someone who can. But you'll be in breach of contract." I thought about my mortgage, my truck payments, my daughter's college tuition. "I'll complete it." "Good. And driver, don't open the trailer. Whatever you think you hear, it's just shifting cargo." He hung up. I stood in the fuel station parking lot, staring at the trailer, knowing with absolute certainty that what I was hauling wasn't industrial equipment. The sounds had grown more complex, tapping, humming, and now something that sounded like scratching, as if something inside was trying to get out. I drove. What else could I do? The tapping and scratching, continued for another hour, then stopped abruptly near Cave City. Complete silence, which was somehow worse than the noise. In that silence, I became aware of something else, a smell seeping into the cab. Not unpleasant exactly, but wrong, metallic and organic at once, like copper mixed with flowers, a combination that shouldn't exist. The temperature in the cab dropped. I cranked the heater to maximum, but the cold persisted, a bone-deep chill that made my breath mist in the air. Frost formed on the inside of the windows, creating patterns that looked deliberate, almost like writing in a language I didn't recognize. Near Nashville, the trailer began to shake. Not the normal sway of road travel, but violent convulsions that threatened to jackknife the rig. I slowed down, hazards flashing, pulling onto the shoulder. The shaking intensified, the entire trailer rocking on its wheels. Then it stopped, immediate, complete stillness. I sat in the cab, engine idling, hands locked on the wheel. The rational part of my brain said to open the trailer, check the load, see what was causing these problems. But every instinct screamed not to, that opening those doors would be the worst mistake of my life. My phone rang, unknown number. I answered. Static, then a voice, distorted, wrong, like multiple people speaking in unison. Keep driving, Mr. Patterson. Almost there, just a little further. Who is this? The cargo. We're awake now. We've been waiting for so long, and now we're almost home. You're doing wonderfully. Don't stop, don't look, don't question, just drive. What are you? Laughter, if you could call it that. A sound like breaking glass and crying children and whined through empty buildings. What we've always been, what we'll always be. The things that ride in the spaces between, using vehicles like yours to travel from where we were to where we need to be. The call ended. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat and accelerated back onto the highway, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The trailer pulled smoothly now, no more shaking, no more sounds, just that smell, getting stronger, and the cold that wouldn't leave. I reached Memphis at dawn. The delivery address led me to an old industrial complex near the river, buildings that looked abandoned but for a single warehouse with lights on. A man waited at the loading dock, young, maybe 25, wearing a suit that seemed too formal for the setting. Right on time, he said, as I backed the trailer into the dock. Any problems? What's in there? Nothing that concerns you. You delivered the cargo. Your payment will be processed within the hour. You should go now. What are you people doing? He smiled, and his teeth were wrong, too sharp, too many. Welcoming home what was lost. Completing a cycle that's been interrupted for far too long. This world has so many empty spaces, Mr. Patterson. Places where things can slip through, where reality gets thin. Your truck is one of those places. Movement creates gaps, and gaps can be traveled. You helped them come home. I left the truck at the dock and walked away, calling for a cab. The company could retrieve their truck. I was done, but as the cab pulled up, I looked back at the warehouse. The trailer doors were open and things were moving in the darkness inside, shapes that didn't match any equipment I'd ever seen, forms that seemed to shift and change as they moved. The man in the suit waved at me. Thank you for your service. We'll be in touch. They haven't contacted me again, but I know they will, because 2 weeks after that delivery, I found something in my current truck's sleeper berth, a sealed envelope, thick and heavy, containing another manifest. Another load of industrial equipment that needs to be delivered. Another impossible pickup location. Another payment that's far too generous for a standard haul. And the worst part? I'm considering taking it. The money is good enough to solve all my financial problems. All I have to do is drive, ignore the sounds, resist the urge to open the trailer doors. Just deliver the cargo and walk away. That's how they get you. Not with force, but with choice. They give you the option to refuse, knowing that eventually the circumstances of your life will make refusal impossible. One more job, one more delivery, one more time helping things travel through the gaps in reality. I'm still holding the manifest, still trying to decide, but the envelope grows warmer each day, and sometimes I hear tapping from inside it, a rhythm that matches the tapping I heard from that trailer. They're waiting for my answer, waiting to see if I'll cross that point of no return willingly, one delivery at a time. Story 6, The Loop. Interstate 80 through Nebraska is one of the straightest, most monotonous highways in America. Perfect for making time, terrible for staying alert. I'd driven it dozens of times in my 19 years of cross-country hauling, always without incident. Until last March, I entered the stretch near Kearney at 11 p.m., planning to drive through the night and reach Omaha by dawn. The highway was empty, just my truck and endless darkness broken by occasional farmstead lights. Standard run, nothing unusual. At mile marker 272, I passed a distinctive water tower painted with a smiley face, some small town's landmark, visible from the highway. I noted it absently, focusing on maintaining speed and staying in my lane. 30 minutes later, I passed the same water tower. I checked my odometer. I'd driven 23 miles. I checked my GPS. It showed me progressing east normally, already past the water tower by a significant distance. But I'd definitely seen it again. Same smiley face, same position relative to the highway, same everything. I shrugged it off. Maybe two towns had similar towers. Nebraska had a sense of humor like that sometimes. 30 minutes after that, I passed it again. Now I was paying attention. I slowed down, watching the mile markers. 272, 273, 274, counting upward normally. My GPS showed steady eastern progress. But when I reached what should have been mile marker 302, there was the water tower again, exactly the same. I pulled over, engine idling, and studied my maps. Nothing suggested any looping roads or circular routes in this area. I-80 ran straight as an arrow across Nebraska. There was no physical way to pass the same landmark 3 times without turning around. I drove again. This time I watched the clock obsessively, counting the minutes. At exactly 30 minutes, the water tower appeared again. Mile marker 272. I'd somehow been reset to the same position despite driving continuously forward. The CB radio crackled to life. Breaker, breaker, eastbound I-80 at marker 272. You got a copy? I grabbed the mic. This is eastbound I-80, go ahead. Yeah, I'm seeing something weird out here. Keeps passing the same water tower every half hour. You seeing that? Relief flooded through me. I wasn't alone, wasn't losing my mind. Roger that. I'm experiencing the same thing. How long have you been in this loop? Silence then. What's today's date? March 17th. More silence. When the voice came back, it sounded shaky. Driver, I entered this stretch on March 3rd. I've been driving for 2 weeks. Same 30 miles over and over 28 times a day. Can't stop, can't exit. The exits don't work. I take them, and they just loop back onto the highway at marker 272. My blood went cold. 2 weeks, food's gone, water's gone. I should be dead, but I'm not hungry, not thirsty, not tired. Just driving, always driving. Tell me you just got here. Tell me there's still a way out for you. I've only been through 3 times. Good. Maybe there's a window before it locks you in. I tried everything. Reversing direction just resets to marker 272 going westbound. Stopping causes the truck to roll forward on its own. Even tried driving off-road, but the terrain just leads back to the highway. It's like these 30 miles are all that exists anymore. I looked around with new fear. The darkness beyond my headlights seemed deeper now, more absolute. What's your name, driver? Marcus Chen. Denver to Philadelphia, standard freight run. Supposed to be a simple job. My name's Jennifer Wallace. What do we do? You need to find the anomaly. Somewhere in these 30 miles, there's something that doesn't belong. something that triggered the loop. If you can identify it, maybe you can break out. I've tried, but after 2 weeks, everything looks the same. Fresh eyes might catch what I've missed. I drove slowly now, examining everything. The farmland looked normal, fields, occasional buildings, fence lines. The highway itself showed standard wear, normal markings. Traffic signs appeared at expected intervals. Then I saw it, a billboard at mile marker 285. It advertised a travel plaza, rest stop ahead, 5 miles all services. But the image on the billboard was strange. It showed a truck stop that looked modern and old-fashioned simultaneously, with design elements from different decades mixed together. And the trucks in the image, I squinted at them. They were the exact same make and model, just the same truck repeated 6 times with different colors. Marcus, there's a billboard at marker 285, advertising a rest stop. You seen that? Yeah, I've passed it. Jesus, hundreds of times. Never thought about it. What about it? The image is wrong. Looks like a composite, like someone who didn't understand truck stops. Tried to create one from descriptions. The rest stop itself doesn't exist. I've driven 5 miles past that sign on every loop. There's never an exit, never any services. I pulled over at the billboard. Up close, it looked even stranger. The text was slightly off, letters with proportions that weren't quite right. The phone number used an area code that didn't exist. And the small print at the bottom, where it should have said which company owned the billboard, instead showed a string of numbers, 272 to 300 and 272 to 300 and 272 to 302. The loop boundaries. Someone or something was advertising its existence. I grabbed a toolbox from my truck and approached the billboard. Marcus's voice came through the CB. What are you doing? Testing a theory. This billboard is the only anomaly I've found. Maybe it's more than just a sign. I climbed the access ladder and examined the billboard surface. It wasn't printed material. It was some kind of screen, paper thin, but illuminated from within, showing an image that moved slightly when I wasn't looking directly at it. Behind the screen, I found machinery. Not billboard lighting equipment, but something else entirely. Complex. Mechanisms with no clear purpose, made from materials I didn't recognize. They hummed with power, creating a vibration I could feel through my bones. I'm going to shut it down, I called out. Wait, what if that makes it worse? Can it get worse than being trapped forever? I didn't wait for an answer. I grabbed the main power cable, at least what looked like a power cable, and yanked it free. The world lurched, colors inverted for a split second. The horizon tilted. I felt like I was falling upward while staying perfectly still. Then everything snapped back to normal with an almost audible click. The billboard went dark, the machinery stopped humming, and in the distance I could see lights I hadn't seen before. The actual rest stop that the billboard had been advertising, real and solid, and definitely not in a loop. I climbed down and ran to my truck. Marcus, it worked. The billboard was generating the loop somehow. I shut it down, no response. Marcus, do you copy? Static, then a final transmission, his voice fading. I can't. The loop is collapsing. I've been here too long. I'm part of it now. Marcus. His signal died. I scanned all CB channels, but he was gone. I drove forward, passing marker 302, then 303, then 304. Real progress, real distance. The loop was broken. At the rest stop, I pulled in and asked the attendant about other drivers. He looked at me strangely. You're the first truck we've had in 3 hours. Real slow night. No one else? No driver named Marcus Chen? Nobody. I filed a report with Highway Patrol about a missing driver. They found no record of Marcus Chen ever entering Nebraska. No truck matching his description. No load manifested in his name. No one who knew him. According to every database, he didn't exist. But I have the recording from my CB radio. His voice, desperate and exhausted, talking about 2 weeks trapped in 30 miles. And sometimes, late at night when I drive I-80 through Nebraska, I hear him on the radio, still calling out, still warning drivers about the loop at mile marker 272. The billboard is gone now. Highway Department says no billboard was ever permitted at that location, but I saw it, touched it, shut it down. And I wonder how many other loops exist on how many other highways, trapping drivers in endless repetitions of the same stretch of road. I still drive I-80, still make my runs from coast to coast, but I watch for the anomalies now, the things that don't quite fit, the images that look wrong, the signs advertising places that don't exist. Because somewhere out there, Marcus Chen is still driving those 30 miles, still passing that water tower every half hour, still trapped beyond the point of no return. And the scary part? He's probably not alone. Story 7th, the radio. My 1998 Freightliner Classic came with original equipment, including an AM/FM radio that barely worked. I'd been meaning to upgrade it for years, but there was always something more important to spend money on. That ancient radio saved my life, or maybe doomed me. I still haven't decided which. The incident started on Highway 50 through Nevada, the so-called loneliest road in America. I was hauling automotive parts from Sacramento to Salt Lake City, running solo through the night. Around 2 a.m., my truck radio died. Just stopped, mid-song, complete silence. I tried the standard troubleshooting, checking fuses, cycling power, adjusting the antenna. Nothing worked. I drove in silence for maybe 20 minutes, just the engine noise and the hum of tires on asphalt. Then the radio came back on. Not any station I'd been listening to, not even a station that should have existed in that empty stretch of Nevada. Instead, it was a broadcast of unusual clarity, perfect reception despite the remote location. Attention all drivers on Highway 50, between mile markers 112 and 178. This is Emergency Broadcast Station Delta 7. We are implementing a mandatory communication protocol. All drivers in the affected zone must acknowledge this transmission. I grabbed my CB radio. Dead. My cell phone showed no signal, which was normal for this area, but when I tried to power it off and on again, it wouldn't respond. The screen was frozen. The radio continued. Temporal anomaly detected at mile marker 145. All traffic must proceed with extreme caution. Do not attempt to turn around. Do not stop. Maintain current speed and direction. The anomaly is expanding at approximately 3 miles per hour. I checked my location. Mile marker 133. Whatever was at marker 145, I was driving toward it at 70 miles per hour. This is crazy, I muttered, reaching to turn off the radio. Do not disable this transmission. The voice on the radio responded instantly, as if hearing me. Communication is essential for successful navigation of the anomaly. Driver of vehicle. There was a pause. California commercial plate 7B 32456, please acknowledge. That was my plate number. No way should a radio broadcast know that. Who is this? I said aloud, feeling foolish for talking to a radio. Acknowledgement received. Driver identity confirmed as Robert Stevenson, age 41. CDL license number. And it recited my license number perfectly. Current cargo, automotive parts, manifest number. Again, perfectly accurate. How do you know all this? We are monitoring all vehicles in the affected zone. The anomaly at mile marker 145 is a temporal displacement event. Time is not flowing correctly in that location. You will experience the event in approximately 11 minutes. Prepare yourself. Prepare for what? You will perceive alternative presence, moments when different choices were made, different events occurred, different outcomes manifested. Maintain focus on your current reality. Do not accept alternative versions as truth, no matter how convincing they appear. I wanted to turn around, but the highway behind me looked wrong in my mirrors. The asphalt seemed to shimmer like heat waves, except it was 42 degrees out. And beyond the shimmer, the road looked different, older or newer, I couldn't tell which. The anomaly is now behind you as well, the radio confirmed. Forward is your only option. I drove, watching the mile markers count up. 138, 139, 140. My hands were sweating despite the cold. At marker 143, the truck's dashboard clock began to behave strangely. The numbers flickered, showing different times: 2:15 a.m., 4:37 p.m., 11:03 a.m., all cycling rapidly. "You're entering the peripheral effect zone," the radio narrated. "Stay calm. Trust your memory of recent events. You left Sacramento 9 hours ago. You stopped for fuel in Fallon. Your last meal was a sandwich at 9 p.m. Anchor yourself to these facts. At mile marker 145, reality fractured. One moment I was driving through darkness. The next, it was full daylight, the sun high overhead. Then dusk with orange sky, then dawn, then night again. The transitions happened every few seconds, cycling through different times of day with no pattern. But worse than that were the changes to the highway itself. Sometimes it was the modern paved road I'd been driving on. Sometimes it was older, cracked asphalt from decades past. Sometimes it was gravel. Once, for just a moment, it was dirt. Other vehicles appeared and disappeared. A sedan driving beside me, then gone. A truck passing me, then vanishing. Once, I saw what looked like a horse-drawn wagon, but it phased out before I could process it fully. "Do not deviate from your path," the radio commanded. The temporal streams are intersecting. Multiple versions of this highway from different time periods are overlapping. Your truck exists in all of them simultaneously. Maintain speed. Maintain direction. My cargo area made sounds, the metallic parts shifting, but also other sounds beneath them. Voices, whispers, as if my trailer was carrying passengers I couldn't see. "Your cargo is temporally stable," the radio said. The sounds are echoes from alternative timelines where your trailer carries different freight. Ignore them. The mile markers became unreliable. I saw marker 146 3 times, then jumped to marker 152, then back to 147. My odometer spun forward and backward randomly. Then I saw myself. Another freightliner, identical to mine. Same paint job, same company logos, driving in the opposite direction. And through the windshield, I saw me. Same face, same expression of horror, same white-knuckled grip on the wheel. "That is you," the radio confirmed. "From a timeline where you chose to turn around. You are seeing the moment of your own past decision, or future decision, or decision never made. Time is not linear here." The other truck passed, and I saw its trailer. It was covered in rust, as if it had been driving for decades, and painted on the side, barely visible, were words, "Still driving." "Some versions of you have been in the anomaly for a very long time," the radio said quietly. "Subjectively, they've been driving this stretch for years, unable to escape because they made different choices. You are currently making the correct choices. Continue." More versions of myself appeared. One truck was on fire but still driving, the flames frozen in place. Another was partially transparent, like a ghost. A third looked normal except the driver, me, was screaming silently, mouth open, eyes wide with madness. "Those are the failed timelines," the radio explained. "Versions where you didn't follow instructions, where you stopped or turned around or tried to leave the vehicle. They exist in loops, driving forever, unable to move forward in time." I was crying now, tears running down my face, but I kept driving. What else could I do? At mile marker 178, or what the radio confirmed was mile marker 178, though the sign showed 145. The world snapped back to normal. Single timeline, nighttime, empty highway, no anomalies. My dashboard clock stabilized at 2:43 a.m. Only 28 minutes had passed, though it felt like hours. The radio spoke one more time. You have successfully navigated the temporal anomaly. The event has passed. You may resume normal operations. Please do not discuss this experience with others. Most will not believe you, and official acknowledgement of temporal anomalies is not authorized. Continue your route. Good luck, Mr. Stevenson. Then the radio died again, completely dead. No power, no static. When I got to Salt Lake City, a mechanic couldn't get it working. He said the wiring was fried, looked like it had been hit by an electrical surge. But I kept the radio, took it out of the truck before I sold the Freightliner, mounted it on a shelf in my garage, because 3 months later, it turned itself on. No power source, no battery, no connection to anything. Just sitting on the shelf, it activated, and that same voice came through. Attention, Robert Stevenson. New anomaly detected. Highway 93, Nevada, mile markers 56 through 67. You will pass through this zone in 4 days according to your current route. Please acknowledge. I destroyed the radio, took a sledgehammer to it, smashed it into pieces. But the next day, it was back on the shelf, intact, and the voice came through again. Destruction of the receiver is not possible. You have been marked as a reliable navigator. Your services will be required at intervals. Acknowledge. I don't want this, I said. Acknowledgement accepted. Next assignment in 4 days. Instructions will follow. Thank you for your cooperation. That was 3 years ago. The radio has activated 17 times since then. Each time it gives me advance warning of a temporal anomaly on a route I'm scheduled to drive. Each time, it guides me through impossible moments where time breaks down and multiple realities intersect. I can't refuse. If I avoid the routes, the anomalies expand, affecting other drivers who aren't prepared. I checked after the first time I tried to dodge an assignment. 7 trucks disappeared from Highway 93 that night, vanished completely, no trace. And the radio told me, in that same calm voice, your absence resulted in unguided transits. 7 drivers are now temporally displaced. This is your responsibility. So I drive. When the radio calls, I answer. I navigate the impossible intersections of time, watching other versions of myself fail or succeed, seeing highways that exist in multiple decades simultaneously, always following the instructions that keep me and others from being lost forever, in moments that loop and repeat and never resolve. The other drivers don't know. They pass through these anomalies unguided, sometimes making it through safely by luck, sometimes disappearing into failed timelines. But I see them, all those alternative versions, all those loops where someone made the wrong choice at the wrong moment. And I wonder how many of them are still driving, still trapped, still passing the same mile markers forever, long past any point of no return that matters. Because that's the thing about time anomalies, you don't die in them. You just drive forever, in a moment that never ends, on a highway that never resolves into anything but more highway. The radio is back on my dashboard now. It activates again in 6 days. I don't know where the next anomaly will be, but I'll be ready. I don't have a choice. None of us do really. We're all just driving through time, hoping the road stays linear, hoping reality holds together long enough to reach the next destination. The only difference is, I know it doesn't always work that way. And once you know that, you can never forget it. Ever. Story 8, The Mirror Convoy. I was running Interstate 40 through the Texas Panhandle when I saw the convoy in my mirrors. 8 trucks, identical distances apart, all matching my speed exactly. In 26 years of driving, I'd seen plenty of informal convoys, drivers bunching up naturally, coordinating through CB radio. But this was different, too precise, too synchronized. I picked up the CB mic. Breaker, breaker. This is eastbound on I-40, checking on the convoy behind me. Y'all coordinating, or is this just coincidence? Silence. I watched my mirrors. The trucks maintained perfect spacing, never varying more than a few feet. Their headlights created a pattern, a rhythm in the darkness. Convoy behind me, you got ears on? Still nothing. I tried different channels, same result. 8 trucks, close enough to see clearly, but no radio communication. That was odd enough, but then I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The trucks were all Peterbilt 579 seconds. Same year model, same configuration, same color, identical to mine. I slowed down, moving to the right lane. The convoy slowed with me, maintaining exact distance. I sped up to 75. They matched me perfectly. I watched my speedometer and theirs, because I could see their speedometer needles through their windshields, and they moved in perfect synchronization. "What the hell?" I whispered. That's when I noticed the drivers. I couldn't make out faces, but their postures, their positions in the seats, even the way they held the steering wheels, all identical to how I was sitting, how I was holding my wheel. I was leading a convoy of myself. My logical mind rejected it. Coincidence, tricks of light and darkness, fatigue causing hallucinations. But I checked every detail I could see. Company logos on the trucks, same as mine. License plates, I couldn't read them clearly, but the formats looked wrong, like they might be the same numbers as my plates. I pulled off at the next exit, curious if they'd follow. The first truck in the convoy put on its turn signal, right, exactly when I had signaled, and followed me off the highway. Then the second. Then all of them, a perfect line of identical trucks exiting behind me. The ramp led to a truck stop. I pulled into the parking lot, and the convoy pulled in with me. I parked in a spot at the far end, away from other vehicles. The 8 trucks parked in the adjacent spots, surrounding mine in a semicircle. I sat in my cab, doors locked, watching. The other trucks' engines shut down simultaneously. Their lights went dark. Everything fell silent. Then, one by one, the drivers climbed out. They were me. All of them. Same height, same build, same clothes, exact copies, right down to the coffee stain on my shirt that I'd gotten that morning. They stood by their trucks, not moving, just watching my truck. 8 versions of myself, perfectly still, perfectly silent. I grabbed my phone to call. "Who? The police? Hello, officer. I'm being surrounded by copies of myself." The phone had no signal anyway, showing full bars but unable to connect to anything. One of the copies walked toward my truck. His gait was identical to mine, the slight limp from an old knee injury. He stopped at my driver's side window and looked up at me with my own face. "We need to talk," he said. His voice was mine too, down to the slight rasp from years of cigarettes I'd quit a decade ago. "What are you? We're you. Different versions, from different choices. The highway system isn't just roads, it's decisions. Every time you chose one route over another, one exit instead of the next, you created branches. We're from the branches you didn't take. That's not how reality works. That's exactly how reality works. You just never had to see it before. Tonight, the branches converged. All the versions of this drive, all the different choices you could have made, they're intersecting at this point. We're all here, all trying to complete the same run, all competing for which version becomes the real one that continues forward. The other copies had moved closer, forming a circle around my truck. What do you want? Your route, your timeline, your continuation. We all made different choices and most of them were wrong. Dead ends, literally. We're stuck, unable to move past this point, unable to complete our runs. But you made the right choices. Your timeline is still open, still progressing. If we can take your place, we can continue. You can't just...
We can. We will. One of us. The highway will choose which version is most viable, most likely to complete the journey. And that version will replace you. The others will fade. You'll probably fade too. I started the engine. The copies moved faster than I expected, surrounding the truck completely, pressing against it. They started pushing, and impossibly, the truck moved despite its weight and their human strength. They were coordinating perfectly, applying force at exact points. I threw the truck in gear and hit the accelerator. The truck lurched forward and the copies scattered, all except one who jumped onto my running board holding on, staring through the window with my own desperate eyes. "You can't run from us," he shouted over the engine noise. "We are you. We follow wherever you go because we're already there. Every road you take, we've taken it too. Every choice you make, we made it. You're not escaping, you're just selecting which version survives." I swerved, trying to dislodge him. He held on, impossibly strong. His free hand reached for the door handle, and I realized with horror that it was unlocking. Of course it was. He knew exactly how to manipulate the mechanism, knew the little trick where you had to pull while pushing. The door flew open. He lunged inside, grabbing the wheel. We struggled, two identical people fighting for control, the truck swerving wildly across the parking lot. Other truckers dove out of the way as we crashed through parking barriers. "Just let go," he screamed in my voice. "One of us has to continue. Why should it be you? I made good choices too. I drove carefully. I followed the rules. Why does your timeline get to proceed while mine ends?" I did the only thing I could think of. I slammed on the brakes, hard. The truck stopped with violent force, and the copy flew forward, smashing into the windshield. The glass cracked but held. He slumped, dazed. I shoved him out the door and slammed it, locking it. In my mirrors, I saw him lying on the pavement, and the other 7 copies converging on him. They weren't helping him up. They were absorbing him. His form became translucent, then faded, his substance merging with the others. 7 left, I heard in my own voice from outside the truck. Then 6, then 5, until there's only 1. And then that one will come for you again. Because we're you, and you're us, and only one version can exist at the end of this route. I drove back to the highway entrance, not looking back. But in my mirrors, 8 trucks pulled out behind me. One had returned, reformed. The absorbed copy redistributed among the others. The convoy reformed in perfect spacing. They followed me for 147 miles. Every time I blinked, one would vanish. 8 became 7, 7 became 6. The remaining copies absorbed their failed versions, becoming more substantial, more real with each absorption. When only one copy remained, it pulled alongside me. We drove parallel, identical trucks, identical drivers, perfectly matched speed on an empty highway. He looked over at me, and I looked back at myself. "Last choice," he said, though I shouldn't have been able to hear him. "The highway has to decide which version completes the journey." The road ahead split. Not an exit or an interchange, but an impossible division where the highway became 2 parallel paths, each leading to the same destination but in different dimensions, realities. I didn't have words for it. "Choose," my copy said. "Left or right. One path leads forward, one path loops back, and you'll become a copy, following future versions of yourself, trying to replace them. How do I know which is which? You don't. That's the point. That's the choice." The split was getting closer, seconds to decide. I looked at my copy, at myself, seeing the same fear and uncertainty I felt. We were exactly the same experiences, same knowledge, same hesitation. Then I noticed one difference. The coffee stain on his shirt, it was on the wrong side. A mirror image. He wasn't me.
He was my reflection, somehow made real and solid, and reflections are always reversed. I jerked the wheel right. He went left, and as we diverged, I watched in my mirror as his truck faded, becoming transparent, then vanishing. The left path led nowhere. The right path continued forward, solid and real beneath my wheels. The highway merged back into one road. The impossible split was gone. I was alone, no convoy, no copies, just a normal night drive through Texas. But I don't trust mirrors anymore. Every time I check my rear view, every time I glance at my side mirrors, I'm terrified I'll see that convoy again. Those 8 trucks with perfect spacing, those copies of myself following behind, waiting for the next convergence, the next chance to replace me. Because the thing about reflections is they're always there. You just don't always see them. And now I know that sometimes, on certain highways, under certain conditions, they can step out of the mirror and into the driver's seat. I still drive, still haul freight across the country. But I've installed extra mirrors, angled so I can see my cab from multiple perspectives, ensuring that the person in the driver's seat casts proper reflections from all angles. Some nights I catch inconsistencies, reflections that move slightly wrong, that show me wearing different clothes, that reveal alternate versions still trying to break through. Those nights, I drive faster, putting distance between myself and whatever convergence point is trying to manifest. Because I know now that every road is a choice, every mile a selection between branching realities, and somewhere in all those rejected paths, my copies are still driving, still following, still waiting for the moment when the highway decides their version should have been the real one all along. That's the true point of no return, not a place on a map, but the moment you realize you're not unique, that there are other versions of you making other choices, and sometimes those versions want what you have badly enough to take it. I'm still here, still driving, still me. But I check my mirrors constantly now, watching for that perfect spacing, that synchronized movement, that convoy of myself that could appear at any moment. Because once you've seen your own reflection step out of the mirror, you never quite trust that the person in the driver's seat is really you ever again. Story 9th. The road work. Construction zones are part of the job. Orange cones, reduced speed limits, workers in high visibility vests. I'd driven through thousands of them in my 16 years as a professional driver. The one on Highway 50 through West Virginia looked completely normal. That should have been my first warning. The sign sequence was standard. Road work ahead, 2 miles, then speed limit 45, then workers present. I slowed down, clicking on my 4 ways. The construction zone stretched ahead, illuminated by portable light towers every 100 yards, but there were no workers. Cones narrowed the 2-lane highway to single lane, barriers channeled traffic through a specific path, and equipment sat along the shoulders. Backhoes, graders, dump trucks, but not a single person was visible. The equipment wasn't running. Everything was positioned as if work had just stopped, workers taking a break simultaneously. At 3 a.m., maybe that made sense. But something felt wrong. The equipment was too old, vintage models from the 1960s mixed with modern machinery, and the barriers weren't standard USDOT types. They were wooden sawhorses painted orange, the kind they stopped using decades ago. I drove slowly through the zone, following the cone line. The route wound through what should have been straight highway, creating unnecessary curves and diversions. My GPS showed I-50 as a straight line, but the cones forced me into a pattern that looked almost ritualistic from above, loops and curves that served no construction purpose. Then I saw the workers. They appeared suddenly, maybe 20 of them, all facing the highway. Not doing any work, not moving, just standing in a line parallel to my route. They wore safety vests and hard hats, but their clothes underneath were wrong, too old-fashioned. like costumes from a historical film. As I passed, they all turned their heads to watch me, moving in perfect unison. None of them had faces, not masks, not darkness, just smooth skin where features should have been, as if they'd never had eyes or mouths or noses. I accelerated, despite the posted speed limit. The construction zone should have ended by now. I'd driven at least 5 miles of it, far longer than the 2 miles the sign had indicated. But the cones continued. The barriers funneled me onward, and the orange signs kept appearing. Roadwork continues. Stay in lane. Do not exit. The faceless workers appeared again, closer this time. They stood just beyond the barriers, dozens of them now, all watching silently as I passed. One raised his arm, pointing at something ahead. The others raised their arms too, all pointing in the same direction, like synchronized warning signals. Ahead, the construction route led into a tunnel. Not a natural tunnel through a mountain, but an artificial structure built specifically for this detour. Fresh concrete walls, fluorescent lights overhead, and that's when I knew this wasn't real construction. Highway 50 through this part of West Virginia was built on relatively flat terrain. There was no reason for a tunnel. I stopped the truck. Behind me, the construction zone I'd just driven through had changed. The barriers had moved closer, narrowing the path, blocking any chance to turn around, and the faceless workers were walking toward me, moving with that same synchronized precision. I had no choice. I drove into the tunnel. The fluorescent lights flickered as I entered, and the tunnel seemed longer than should be possible. The walls curved slightly, giving the impression of driving through a throat or esophagus. My radio filled with static, then voices, overlapping conversations in languages I didn't recognize, mixed with sounds that might have been machinery or might have been breathing. Mile markers appeared inside the tunnel, counting upward, 1, 2, 3, but I'd only driven a few hundred yards. The markers accelerated, 5, 8, 13, 21, counting by Fibonacci numbers now, some mathematical progression that made my head hurt. Then I saw them, other vehicles embedded in the tunnel walls, not crashed or abandoned, embedded, as if they'd been absorbed by the concrete. I could see a station wagon from the 1970s, half merged with the wall, its windows showing terrified faces inside, still moving, still alive somehow. A pickup truck from the 1990s, the driver's hands pressed against the glass from inside the wall. A delivery van with its side panel flush with the concrete. The logo still readable. Benson Plumbing, call 555-147. They were all still running. I could hear their engines, see their exhaust pipes emitting smoke that had nowhere to go, just accumulating inside the walls. And the people inside were still moving, still trying to escape, trapped in concrete that had somehow solidified around them without killing them. The tunnel began to narrow. The walls moved closer, inch by inch, the ceiling lowering. My trailer scraped against both walls simultaneously, metal shrieking against concrete. If I stopped, I'd be next, absorbed into the structure, becoming part of this impossible tunnel, driving forever inside solid stone. I floored the accelerator. The engine roared, the transmission screamed, and my truck forced its way through the narrowing passage. The walls scraped away paint, then metal, tearing into my trailer like it was paper. I felt the vehicle being pulled toward the walls, as if magnetism or gravity or something worse was trying to drag me into permanent embedding. Ahead, I saw an exit, a circle of darkness beyond the fluorescent lights. I aimed for it, my truck disintegrating around me, side panels ripping off, the trailer roof peeling away, cargo spilling out and being absorbed by the walls instantly. I burst out of the tunnel in what was left of my cab, the trailer mostly gone, shredded by the impossible narrowing. I was back on Highway 50, normal night darkness, no construction zone, no cones, no barriers, just regular highway with the stripes and signs I'd been expecting all along. I pulled over, shaking. In my mirrors, there was no tunnel. The highway behind me looked normal, no sign of the construction zone I'd just escaped. But my truck was destroyed. The trailer reduced to a skeletal frame, the cab badly damaged, paint and metal stripped away by the tunnel walls. I called 911. They sent state police. The trooper who responded looked at my truck with confusion. "Sir, what happened here?" "Construction zone, tunnel. It tried to absorb me." "What construction zone?" "Highway 50 doesn't have any active work in this section." It was there, miles of it, workers with no faces, barriers, a tunnel. He checked with dispatch, confirmed no construction permits had been issued for this area. He ran my license, checked my logs, administered a field sobriety test. I passed everything. I wasn't drunk or high or operating outside legal parameters. I was just a driver with a destroyed truck and an impossible story. The insurance investigation found evidence consistent with my claims. Sort of. The damage patterns on the truck showed compression from both sides simultaneously, as if it had been driven through an impossibly tight space. But the paint and metal fragments should have been left behind at the site of the damage, and they weren't anywhere on the highway. It's like your truck was squeezed by something that didn't leave any trace of itself, the investigator said. I've never seen anything like it. I was found at fault for the loss. Insurance paid out a partial claim, enough to buy a used replacement truck, but not enough to fully cover my losses. The cargo was a total loss, with no evidence of where it went or how it was damaged. But the worst part came 3 weeks later. I was driving through Pennsylvania when I saw the construction signs again. Same sequence, roadwork ahead, 2 miles, same orange cones narrowing the highway, same vintage equipment mixed with modern machinery, and the faceless workers standing in a line, all turning to watch me as I approached. I didn't slow down. I blew through that construction zone at 80 miles per hour, ignoring the speed limits, ignoring the cone patterns that tried to divert me. The workers scattered, or seemed to. It was hard to tell with no faces to read their reactions. I passed through without entering any tunnel, emerging onto clear highway beyond. But the signs keep appearing. Different highways, different states, but always the same. Construction zones with no actual construction. Faceless workers watching. And somewhere within the cone patterns, a tunnel that leads nowhere good. I've learned to recognize the signs, the mix of old and new equipment, the unnecessarily complex routing, the absence of actual workers until you're committed to the path. When I see those indicators, I don't slow down. I don't follow the diversion. I drive straight through, cones and barriers be damned. Other truckers have reported similar experiences, shared in hushed conversations at rest stops, fake construction zones that appear and disappear, tunnels that shouldn't exist, vehicles that enter the zones and never emerge. The stories are always dismissed as urban legends, fatigue-induced hallucinations, creative excuses for accidents and delays. But I've seen the missing truck listings, the drivers who vanished on straightforward routes with no explanation. I've checked the highways where they disappeared, and sure enough, transportation departments have no record of construction in those locations on those dates. They're still out there, I think, still driving inside those tunnels, embedded in walls that are somehow both solid concrete and empty space, still moving but going nowhere, trapped in construction zones that exist outside normal geography. I carry bolt cutters now, chains and a winch. If I ever can avoid one of those zones, if I'm forced into the tunnel again, I'm prepared to cut my way out or die trying, because I've seen what happens to drivers who stay trapped. I've seen their faces pressed against tunnel walls, still alive, still aware, still experiencing every moment of their eternal embedding. That's the point of no return those construction zones represent. Not a place you can't come back from, but a place you never finish leaving, a route that loops forever, under signs that always say road work ahead because the work never ends and the road never resumes. I'm still driving, still hauling freight, but part of me wonders if I really escaped that tunnel or if I'm still inside it, and everything since has been a hallucination generated by a mind that can't accept being embedded in concrete forever. Sometimes I look at my hands on the steering wheel and wonder if they were pressed against glass instead. If I'm watching myself drive from inside a wall, if the real me is still in that tunnel, and this is just the dream of escape that every trapped driver experiences. I'll never know for sure. And that uncertainty is its own kind of prison, its own endless construction zone that I'll drive through for the rest of my life. Never quite sure if the exit is real or just another curve that leads deeper into the tunnel. Story 10th, the last stop. Highway 12 through North Dakota is largely service-free for a 100-mile stretch. I knew this before I started. The run, planned my fuel stops accordingly, made sure I had supplies. What I didn't plan for was the truck stop that appeared at mile marker 87. It showed up on my GPS suddenly, as if the system had just updated. Gill's last stop, 0.5 miles with symbols indicating fuel, food, lodging, and repair services. Strange that I'd never noticed it before on this route, but welcome. My fuel gauge was lower than expected, possibly a leak in the tank. The exit appeared right on schedule, and I took it. The ramp led to a facility that looked like it had been there for decades. Classic design, neon signs, large gravel lot with maybe 15 trucks already parked. The main building was single-story, brick and glass, with warm lights spilling from the windows. I pulled up to the fuel pumps. They were old-style mechanical numbers, no digital displays. A young attendant came out, maybe 20 years old, wearing coveralls and a genuine smile. "Evening, sir. Fill it up, please. Premium diesel." He started the pump, and I went inside to pay. The convenience store was immaculate, shelves fully stocked with products from every era. Modern energy drinks next to soda brands that hadn't existed in decades. Current candy bars beside cigarette brands that were discontinued in the 1980s. Everything was organized perfectly. Prices handwritten on tags that showed amounts like 15 cents for items clearly worth much more. The clerk at the counter was older, maybe 70, with kind eyes. First time at Gill's? Didn't even know it was here. Most folks don't, until they need it. That's how it works. You needed a stop, and here we are. I paid for the fuel. The price was absurdly low, like the printed signs suggested, and grabbed coffee and a sandwich. The coffee was the best I'd ever tasted, and the sandwich was fresh, like it had been made minutes ago despite the late hour. In the dining area, I saw other drivers eating, reading, talking quietly. They all had a similar look, tired, relieved, grateful to have found this place. I sat near a window and ate, watching my truck getting fueled. That's when I noticed nobody was leaving. Trucks were parked, drivers were inside, but no one was walking back to their vehicles. No one was pulling out of parking spots. No engines were starting. It was a busy truck stop frozen in time, with all arrival and no departure. I stood up, suddenly nervous. The other drivers looked at me, their expressions shifting from relief to something else. Pity, maybe, or resignation. "You figured it out quick," the old clerk said from behind the counter. "Smart. Most folks take a few hours. What is this place?" "Exactly what the sign says. The last stop. End of the road. Final destination." "I don't understand." "You died, son. About 12 miles back. Fell asleep at the wheel. Drifted into the opposing lane. Hit a concrete barrier at 70 miles an hour. Your truck's a twisted wreck. Emergency crews are cutting you out of it right now, but they're not gonna find a pulse." I felt the blood drain from my face. No, I'm fine. I'm here. I'm talking to you. You're in the space between. The moment between dying and death. For truck drivers, that moment looks like this. One last stop, one last truck stop. The kind you always hope to find after a long day. Warm food, cheap fuel, friendly faces. It's not heaven or hell, just the last stop before whatever comes next. I looked at the other drivers. They were watching me with understanding. They'd all had this same conversation, this same horrible realization. I can't be dead. I have a family. I have a run to complete. I have had, the clerk corrected gently. Past tense now. I'm sorry. It's always hard with the young ones, the ones who weren't ready. I ran outside to my truck. It was there, solid and real, fuel pump still running. I yanked it out, not caring about the spillage, and climbed into the cab. The keys were in the ignition. I started the engine. It roared to life, normal and powerful. I'm not dead, I shouted to no one. I'm right here. I threw the truck in gear and drove toward the exit back to Highway 12. The route was clearly marked, easy to follow. But as I approached the ramp, something strange happened. The road ahead became translucent, like looking through foggy glass. I could see Highway 12 beyond it, see the real world, but it was distant, unreachable. My truck hit the translucent barrier and stopped. Not crashed, not blocked, just stopped, as if the air had turned solid. I reversed and tried again. Same result. The exit existed, but it couldn't be taken. I parked and walked back inside. The clerk was still there, patient and kind. Everyone tries that. Natural response. But you can't go back, son. The road only runs one direction from here. Where does it go? Don't rightly know. Drivers who leave through the other exit don't come back to tell us. Some say it leads to whatever you believe comes next. Some say it's just more road, going on forever. Some say it loops back and you get reborn, start over with a new life. Everyone's got theories, but none of us know for sure. I sat at the counter, and he poured me more coffee. How long can I stay here? Long as you want. Time doesn't work the same way in the between space. Could be minutes or years or forever. Most drivers stay a few subjective hours, rest up, process what happened. Then they head out through the other exit when they're ready. And if I never leave, then you work here like Gil, like me, like the cook in the back and the mechanic in the garage. We were all drivers once, all crashed, all ended up here. Some of us weren't ready to move on, so we stayed. Been running this place for, well, time's funny here. Might be decades, might be centuries. Hard to say. I stayed at Gil's last stop for what felt like 3 days, though I knew objectively it could be 3 seconds or 3 years. I talked with the other drivers, heard their stories, learned about the crashes that killed them. Some were dramatic, jackknifed trailers, multi-vehicle pileups. Others were mundane, heart attacks, aneurysms, falling asleep at the wheel like me. We were all just drivers who'd run out of road, gathered in this impossible truck stop that existed in the space between living and whatever came after. On the third subjective day, I walked to the other exit, the one that didn't lead back to Highway 12, but forward to something else. It looked like a normal ramp, curving away into fog or distance. I couldn't tell which. Any advice? I asked the clerk. Just keep driving. The road will take you where you need to go. It always does. I climbed into my truck one last time. The engine started perfectly. I drove toward the exit, and this time there was no barrier. The road extended forward, solid beneath my wheels. Behind me, Gil's last stop grew smaller in my mirrors, the neon signs glowing warm in the darkness. I'm still driving. The road ahead looks different, not like any highway I drove in life, but not completely unfamiliar either. There are no mile markers, no signs, no GPS signal, just the road stretching forward infinitely, and other vehicles occasionally passing in the distance. Sometimes I wonder if I'm driving towards something or away from something, if there's a destination or if the driving itself is the point. But mostly, I just focus on the road, on keeping the truck moving forward, because that's what drivers do. We drive. It's what we know, what we're good at, what we've always done. And maybe that's what eternity is for people like us. One more run, one more load, one more highway that goes on forever. Not punishment, not reward, just continuation. Just the road and the truck and the endless miles ahead.